The Panther D, Germany's problem child with an engineering degree. It was supposed to be the answer to the T-34, but what they got was a mix between a thoroughbred racehorse and a broken printer. Today we're diving into the real-world story of the Panther D, and then we'll compare it to its War Thunder counterpart just to see how close Gaijin got or missed entirely. Let's rewind to 1941. Germany has just met the Soviet T-34 on the Eastern Front and collectively went, uh-oh. The sloped armor, wide tracks and speed of the T-34 spooked the Wehrmacht so badly they immediately started sketching something better during lunch. General Guderian reported back that the focus of the new tank should be weapons first, mobility second and armor after that. Basically, if you look at it, a very specific tank destroyer. After that instruction came, the VK3002M, the prototype for what we know as the Panther, was pushed forward. Designed by MAN, not the truck company, but yes, also the truck company, the Panther was built to outclass the T-34 in firepower and protection, while still being mobile enough to operate effectively on the vast muddy terrain of the Eastern Front. After very German over-engineering, extremely rapid production testing and deployment, we got the Panther Ausf D, which was the first production model despite starting with D. Because logic. Well, actually not quite. On the contrary, based on support documents, the Panther D should have been renamed as the Panther M, as the new standard in 1942 was to base the model on the design engineering firms instead. However, to go down that rabbit hole, I would need to do a video on its own explaining why the Ausf A was not in fact the first Panther, but the Ausf D instead. The Panther D featured a long-barreled 75mm KWK-42 L70 gun, long enough to knock on Stalin's front door from 2 kilometers away. It also had thick sloped frontal armor up to 80mm, giving it great protection against most allied weapons, well, at least on paper. The suspension was a complex interleaved roadwheel system, which worked great until mud, snow or actual combat entered the chat. It was known for the poor final drive problems throughout the war, and of course, it ran on a Maybach V12 engine, which provided a decent 700 horsepower, unless it caught fire or threw a piston into orbit. The Panther D made its combat debut during Operation Citadel in July 1943, the Battle of Kursk. Unfortunately, the debut was more a comedy of errors than a mechanized blitzkrieg. Rushed into service, some Panther Ds even broke down before even reaching the battlefield. Of the initial 200 deployed, more than half were out of action by the end of the first few days, most due to mechanical failure, not enemy fire. In practice, the Panther D was a logistical nightmare. It required well-trained crews and maintenance teams, which were in short supply. Spare parts were often unavailable, the complex suspension made field repairs an absolute nightmare, and changing a track could take hours, even under fire. Despite these headaches, Germany continued to deploy Panther Ds because, well, what else were they going to do? By the end of 1943, over 800 had been produced, and although improvements came in later models like the Panther A and G, the D laid the foundation, an unstable, high-maintenance foundation, but a foundation nonetheless. So now that we've seen the real Panther D struggle its way across the Eastern Front like a tank-shaped diva, let's shift gears, literally, and fire up War Thunder. Does Gaijin give us a faithful recreation, or is this just another case of digital catfishing? In terms of the 3D model, War Thunder does not exactly nail the aesthetics. As for the model in general, it is very old and low res. The driver's direct vision port cover is incorrect, and the position of the commander's hatch is wrong. For example, the hinge should be above the communications hatch. Even the electrical ports and cables for the smoke grenades are missing. These are just a few of the discrepancies discovered on the vehicle, as there is quite a list of incorrectly modeled parts on the tank. I do feel Gaijin did miss the mark on the modeling front. Let's talk about the KWK-42L70. In real life, this was the Panther's greatest strength. Its 75mm gun had superior penetration to even the Tiger's 88 at long range. It could punch through a Sherman or a T-34 at 2 kilometers. War Thunder reflects this very well. You get access to the PZGR 3942 APC BC round with 173mm of pen at 500 meters. It's accurate, deadly, and just like in history, a nightmare for anything it sees first. However, War Thunder lacks the gun's real-world issue. Early KWK-42s had barrel wear problems and inconsistent shell batches. In-game, your Panther never misfires, so it's a bit like giving a sniper rifle laser sights. It's historically grounded, but polished for gameplay. In real life, the Panther D had 80mm of sloped frontal armor at 55 degrees, equivalent to over 140mm of effective thickness. Its glacis was nearly impervious to most allied rounds, but the lower plate and sides were big weak spots. In War Thunder, the armor scheme is accurate, but the gameplay meta adds nuance. Frontal engagements are viable, but APHE shells can still detonate behind your plate if they sneak through the mantlet or lower glacis. And remember, side armor is thin, just 40mm vertically. T-34-85s and Shermans love catching your broadside, and you feel it. The Panther D used a Maybach 650 horsepower HL210 P30 until late May 1943, when production swapped to the more reliable 700 horsepower HL230 P30. The first version had a theoretical top speed of 55 km an hour, but that was downhill with no enemy in sight. In muddy Russian terrain, you were lucky to move at all, but once the updated engine was added, it had much better mobility. War Thunder keeps this fairly realistic, but does not update the engine to the 700 horsepower version. So acceleration is sluggish, especially compared to the T-34s it often faces. You'll get up to 40 km an hour on road with a spaded crew, but any off-road climb feels like dragging an elephant in a snowstorm. Engine reliability isn't modeled, so at least it doesn't burst into flames every third match. The reload time is quick by World War II standards. Historically, the Panther could manage a 6 to 7 second reload with a trained crew. In War Thunder with an ace loader, you're looking at around 7.2 seconds, semi-accurate and competitive at its BR. Turret rotation, however, is another story. The Panther D used a single gear traverse unit whilst taking hydraulic power from the driveshaft. War Thunder simulates this decently at around 4 degrees a second stock up to 6 degrees a second with upgrades. Don't expect to track light tanks in close quarters. Always hull turn if you can. Here's where the game diverges from history. In real life, the Panther D required constant maintenance, with spare parts that might take weeks or never to arrive. Field crews had nightmares about the interleaved wheels, having to take them apart and repair them during these times. In War Thunder, it's just Silver Lions and a repair timer. The Panther D sits at a battle rating of 5.3, often up-tiered into a full 6.3 hull where it meets tougher tanks. But it's still viable thanks to that gun. It plays best as a long-range sniper or ambush predator, exactly the roles it thrived in historically, assuming it had been towed to the battlefield without breaking down. So, is War Thunder's Panther D accurate? Visually, not so much. Mechanically, it's a best case scenario version missing the correct engine. But it has no overheating, no clutch fires, no, hey Hans, the final drive is in orbit again. Even with the flaws, the armor, gun and mobility all feel grounded in reality, just quite a bit sanded down for gameplay. That being said, if you really enjoyed the content, please consider dropping a like and comment below on what tank you would like to see next. I really do read through the comments and I do take it quite seriously. Here are some videos of some tanks I did recently on the earlier part of World War II. I really hope you check them out and enjoy them. And on that bombshell, I bid you all a farewell. Good night.